Okay, welcome to Wednesday. Go ahead and get out your homework. So the homework was on the distance and midpoint formula. It was worksheet 1. Here are the answers. Go ahead and check, see how many you got wrong, and then answer question 1 on the Google Forms. Okay. Today's going to be a practice day, so nothing new today. We're just going to practice. I found that doing 3 days of distance and midpoint really locks it into your brain. So your homework tonight will be another worksheet very similar to the one that we just did. Like I said, I've just found that doing a couple extra days of practice on this really solidifies the knowledge. Okay, so practice day. Remember the big picture. We're answering 2 questions. Questions are, how long is the line segment? We get that by using the distance formula, by plugging in the x and y coordinates, squaring the difference of the x's, squaring the difference of the y's, adding them together and taking the square root. And remember, this is just the Pythagorean theorem in disguise. And the second question is, where is the midpoint of that line segment? And that is found using the midpoint formula. And the midpoint formula, M for midpoint, gives you the x and the y coordinate. And I will say, and the reason why I do this for 3 days, look at those 2 formulas. There's a lot of similarities and there's a lot of differences. Yes, they both involve x's and they both involve y's. One of them you're subtracting, one of them you're adding. One of them you're squaring, one of them you're not. One of them you're dividing by 2, one of them you're not. Okay, so it's very easy to confuse, but it's not that challenging as long as you're careful. One, you understand, are you asking distance or you're asking midpoint? You look at your resource card, you write the right formula, you label the points, x and y, point 1, point 2, and just look at the formula. By the time you get to high school, Algebra 2, we use these formulas frequently. I wouldn't say a lot, but frequently. You'll be old pros at this. And the key to doing well on this is listening to my advice when I say label and look at the formula. Also to note, these 2 formulas on the resource card that you get on any college entrance test, the SAT, the ACT, they always give you these 2 formulas. So it's not that you have to necessarily memorize these formulas, although you use them enough that typically you do convert them to your memory. All right, so we'll just do a couple practice ones. You've seen this one before. So if I want to know the distance of line segment AB, well, there's point A, point B, the 2 endpoints of the segment. The steps are you label the x coordinates, you label the y coordinates. You make one 0.1, you make one 0.2. Either one, it's fine. I'm sure that Haven is already trying to figure out an easier way of doing this, and there are some techniques that are better than others. I stick with this technique. And then I always teach my classes the same way. But there are some other ways to make this a bit more efficient if you want to investigate that. Okay. So I've got everything labeled x, y, point 1, point 2, and then I'm going to look at the formula itself and just write it from left to right and plug in the right numbers. I would recommend you write d equals and a big long square root symbol, and then put an open parentheses, and then slow down and look at the formula. It says x sub 2. X sub 2 is 1 minus, so I put a minus sign, x sub 1 is a 6. Close the parentheses and square it. Do the same thing for the y coordinates. That would be 9 minus 3. Close the parentheses and square it. Now we follow order of operation, PEMDAS. We do 1 minus 6 is negative 5. 9 minus 3 is 6. We square both of those values. Negative 5 times negative 5 is 25. 6 times 6 is 36. We add those 2. We grab our calculators, take the square root, round to the nearest tenth, and we are done. The more challenging ones, let's do this one together. The more challenging ones involve negative numbers. You'll have that double negative in your equation. So let's see how this works. So let's see. It says x sub 2, that would be negative 1, minus 2 squared, plus negative 7 minus 8. So we didn't get the double negative, but notice everything has a minus sign. Okay, sometimes when you get a double negative, other times you don't. Minus 1 minus 2 is minus 3. Minus 7 minus 8 is minus 15. Square both of those, we would get 9 and 225. Add them together, and then take the square root. All right, the key to doing this correctly is looking at the formula. Either write down the formula itself, the blank one, the generic one, d equals the square root of the quantity x sub 2 minus x sub 1 squared plus the quantity y sub 2 minus y sub 1 squared. Write down the formula or have it at the top of your page and look at it so that when you're filling in the numbers, you can't make a mistake, or I should say you limit your ability to make that mistake because you're looking at the formula. Some people take their pencil and they touch the coordinate before they write it down. All right, go ahead and pause the video. Here are two problems. Go ahead and do these two problems and then answer question number 2 on the Google Forms. How'd you do? All right, let's see. The first one, that would be 3 minus 1 squared plus 8 minus 4 squared. That would be a 2 and a 4. 2 squared is 4. 4 squared is 16. That would give me 20, and the square root of 20 is about 4.5. Okay. Next one, let's see. That would be 8 minus 2 and negative 1 minus 4. Okay. The two negatives turn into a positive, so that's 8 plus 2, which is 10. Negative 1 plus 4. Negative 1 plus 4, which would be 3. 10 squared is 100. 3 squared is 9. 109. And the square root of 109 is about 10.4. Cool? All right. For those of you that need to see that one more time, go ahead and rewind the video and watch that again. All right, the second formula is the midpoint formula. Not the same as the distance formula, but the midpoint. Big picture, remember, you're finding the middle of a segment. So we have segment AB here. A and B are the two endpoints, and you're trying to find the middle. You still do the same thing. You label your points there, x, y, point 1, point 2. And then just like the distance formula, you slowly, methodically plug in the numbers looking at what it says to do. It says x sub 1. X sub 1 is minus 3 plus x sub 2 is 7. So minus 3 plus 7 all over 2, comma, because remember this is a point, comma, 3 plus negative 2. Okay? Negative 3 plus 7 is 4. 3 plus negative 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. And a half is a half. Okay, I wrote it as 0.5 just because of the space there. You could have left it as 1 over 2. Make sense? All right, let's do one together. Once again, label x, y. Let's see, x sub 1 is 2. So 2 plus 6, comma, over 2, sorry, comma, 5 plus 1. Okay, 2 plus 6 is 8. 5 plus 1 is 6. This time we get a nice friendly answer. 8 divided by 2 is 4, comma, 6 divided by 2 is 3. So it's the 0.43. So 0.43 is halfway between 2, comma 5 and 6, comma 1. It is the midpoint of that segment. Make sense? All right, so let's try this one. Go ahead, pause the video, answer the next question on the Google Forms, and then come back, play the video, see if you got it right. All right, let's see what's going on here. What's the midpoint formula? I already got the points. They're already labeled, so I just plug in the values. So that would be what? Negative 1 plus negative 6 over 2, comma, 3 plus negative 10 over 2. Negative 1 plus negative 6, same signs we add. That would be negative 7 over 2. And 3 plus negative 10, opposite sign, subtract, negative 7 over 2. So both of those are the same values. So that's what? Negative 3.5, comma, negative 3.5. Did you get it right? Okay, one more. All right, so this is the other thing that they'll have tonight for homework. Instead of giving you the points of the endpoints, they'll just give you the actual line segment on a graph. So what you will have to do is find the distance and the midpoint of this segment. So in order to find the distance, obviously we use the distance formula. The only issue here is the endpoints are not labeled. No big deal. Just label them. Pick one. All right, we'll call this one point A. Let's see, that's at what? 1, 1, 2, 3. 1, negative 3. And the other endpoint is at 1, 2, 3, is at, call it B, we'll call that 3, 5. You everybody see what I just did there? Label x, y, point 1, point 2, and then simply plug in the values. Right? 3 minus 1 is 2. 2 negatives turn into a positive. 5 plus 3 is 8. That would be 4 and a 64, which is 68. calculator, square root of 68 is about 8.2. Do the same thing with the midpoint. So midpoint formula, my 2 points, I label x, y, 0.1, 0.2, and just plug and chug through the formula. So that would be 1 plus 3 over 2, comma, negative 3 plus 5 over 2. 1 plus 3 is 4, negative 3 plus 5 is 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2, 2 divided by 2 is 1, so we get 2 comma 1. And there you go. That's how those are done. Okay. With that, I'll close the class, and I will see you guys on Friday.